not yet live. We're not yet live. We will be soon, and I am hopeful that Ray will have some information to share with us that shows they're moving things along. As they say, we shall see. I am setting up. Here we will see what's going on. 5 minutes. If you are in the room, bear with me. Hey, everybody, welcome. And if you have any comments you want to make, if you just type them, they will present in the screen here, and I will say, welcome to the press conference. The press conference should start in 4 minutes. So like there, okay? Hey, Corey, how you doing? Chris says, could this be? We shall see. There's a rhyme for you. Corey says, hey, Zenny, finally catching a live stream actually live. It's been a while. I agree, and I apologize. And I will say to all, welcome to the press conference, which should start in 4 minutes. Just attending to one other matter here. Bear with me for a moment. Let's see here. Hope everyone is doing well today. And let's see. Make certain that, Facebook, of course. Share. I'll respond to that in one moment. Just making sure this is posted. 3 minutes and counting. Okay. Let's see. Let's see here. There. Okay. Who else? Oakland. Where else? A group. Raiders. And who else? 2 minutes. NFL football. And let's see here. Of course. Raiders, of course. All right. We are close to starting. And now let me go back and get your comments in. Make sure I'm getting those in. Larry says, dawn of a new beginning in Oakland. I've been there 3 times since the Raiders left. we'll see what's going on, and what Ray has to share with us. Ray and his group, Ray Bobbitt, who spearheaded was one of the people who spearheaded the effort to sue the NFL and the Raiders, as you may remember. So it's a matter of time. Just a matter of time, as they say. I'm just making sure that other systems here are shut down, so I have enough RAM. Corey says, even at the super early stage, this can be huge. He's definitely doing a great job of putting out PR. I think the main concern, I have two main concerns. One of them is money. You know, who do you have involved? Oh, here we are. Here we are. We have Ray. Start my video and unmute. Hello. I believe we are starting.
All right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and begin. We're at 11 a.m. First of all, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to come and join us here today. My name is Ray Bobbitt, and I'm the co-chair of the Oakland African American Sports and Entertainment Group. Our primary mission, one of our primary objectives at this point, is to work to bring a NFL team to Oakland. And our hope is that it will be a historical landmark where this will be the first African-American owned NFL team to come to Oakland. So we are very excited about the prospects. We're very excited about the interaction with the NFL at this point. I'll definitely go into that. I just wanted to take a brief minute just to kind of give an overview of kind of what we were going to discuss today. So I'll start with the fact that on July 8th, we received a letter from the NFL, specifically from the executive vice president, Jim Miller. We had sent a letter to Roger Goodell on June 16th, and we got that response on July 8th from Jim Miller. And in that letter, we specifically proposed that Oakland have an opportunity to bring an NFL team, an expansion team to Oakland. Within that letter that we sent originally to the NFL, we had laid out three options. The first option was to follow the current rule of NFL ownership, whereas there would be a principal owner that would own 30% of would have to own 30% of the franchise fee, as well as the club itself. The second option was to get an exemption from that rule, which would allow for us to have a group economics concept where there would be multiple people who would be able to come together under a group economics scenario and get an exemption to the 30% rule of one principal owner. And then the third option that we sent a option for what's called the Green Bay model, option 3, where we would have a community-owned situation where we would adopt the Green Bay model and get an exemption, and we would have it would be a community-owned team. So that would be the first, we'd be the second NFL team to have the community-owned model. So when we sent those, the response back that we got from the NFL was favorable from the standpoint of being open to communicating with us. They gave us a relative clear framework with respect to how we would approach and move forward in the process. Under their Rooney Rule, they cited that they would be open to allowing us to compile a list of potential principal owners that were African American, and they would be happy to explore the option to look at those owners and vet them within their process, and to look at any other scenarios that we had that we thought would fall underneath the Rooney Rule that has been expanded to make room for ownership at this point under our letter. So this other thing that they did is they defined what it would take to bring a team to Oakland. Clearly, it would either be that there would need to be a sale of a team, and then that sale of that team would have to create a relocation scenario, and that would be one way that would happen. According to the letter, there are no current teams available for sale in the NFL. And so what we also talked about and what we got in the framework was an expansion process and what that would look like, and what we would have to do. And clearly, I just want to be clear on the fact that we felt it was important that they understood initially that we would be very much interested in expansion, primarily because there's not an opportunity. We have no control over whether somebody's going to sell their team. We have no control over whether somebody would relocate a team here. And I think more importantly, after what happened to our community twice, we would probably be not very inclined to take a relocation franchise. So our goal is expansion, and our goal is to engage the NFL from that perspective. But the thing we have to do first is we have to put together our package and our list, and we just wanted to kind of start with that. The community owned Green Bay model is a model that we feel, personally, and I think our group as a whole is very interested in. We feel like that because, just from the standpoint of statistically, you're talking about it within, the NFL process. The truth is that you pretty much have to be a billionaire in order to become an NFL owner. Let's just be clear. That you have a franchise fee that could be determined however they see according to their rules. But what we've heard, and this is not confirmed by the NFL, I want to be clear, it's typically they take the lowest value of the lowest club, and that becomes the potential landmark or identifier for the franchise fee. So at this point, the Buffalo Bills would be the lowest value team at, I think, $1.94 billion. That would mean that you're talking about $2 billion franchise fee, and you would be talking about $600 million up front, 30% from one principal owner. It doesn't allow funds. It's very specific. The rules are very specific with respect to the NFL. So clearly, with that in mind, there are 614 billionaires in America, and there's 6 African-American billionaires in America. So, if it just from a standpoint of it being proportionate, if we had, if it was proportionate to our population, we'd have probably 82 billionaires, but we only have 6, of which we don't know how many would actually be interested in owning an NFL team. So as a result of that, we presented the options that we presented, and we wanted to make sure that the NFL understood that our approach towards this situation, one of the primary components of the social justice movements that's happening now is economic equity. And there's not a lot of opportunity. And one of the issues is that, in order for us to become owners, there would have to be some sort of exemption within the process of how the NFL would approach Oakland. We feel like Oakland is a great destination. It's been a 47-year host of the NFL. We came very close to hosting a Super Bowl here with Zenny Abram and others. I think they ran under I think they were the runner-up. So Oakland has always been a market that the NFL's liked. So we feel that it's a great market. We sent them all the statistics. We sent them all of the reasoning why. Oakland's a great market for the NFL. We were rated number 3, believe it or not, in a recent study that the NFL conducted that we shared with them, which they knew, but we just wanted to reinforce the fact that, as far as the economic sustainability, we're in COVID, and it probably is that, Oakland rents are sustaining while San Francisco's are decreasing. So it gives you an idea of the power of Oakland from the standpoint of its future economic engine. So there's a lot of factors that came into play. So we wanted to make sure that we were clear with the NFL that if there was a community that would earn the right to have an exemption and have a community-owned model, it would be Oakland. Based on the commitment that we've made to the NFL over the years, 47 years as a host city, we understand how to run NFL games. We understand egress, ingress. We understand the process. We understand security. We have the infrastructure for media. We have everything. So those were all favorable. And that's why I believe that they are open to what we're engaging. So that's important for us. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know that there's always a lot of questions initially when we first talked about this was how is it going to be possible for you to raise enough money to have an NFL team? And the question and the answer to that question is very clear. We want an opportunity to get an exemption so that we can create group economics in a circumstance in which our community can actually participate in NFL ownership. And we believe that we've been so committed to the NFL that if there was ever a city that would have an exemption like that in their rule, it would be Oakland. So that's where we are resolving the prospects. The other thing that we talked about is, they've asked, hey, is there, what's the appetite like for NFL in Oakland? And it's very simple. People are excited about it. We've got an overwhelming amount of support and input with respect to this process. It also highlights that, the African-American dollar, we're talking about $1 trillion per year. It's a very strong buying market. And to have the first African-American principally owned football team in a culturally African-American owned or African-American city is something that people feel very positive about. I think they also were very receptive to the fact that, look, we're not asking for anything. We're not asking for any handouts in our community. We want to create a circumstance in which we can make this viable and make it happen and make it possible. And so that's where we're at. And we want to make sure that if there's an opportunity for the NFL to make exemptions or to make an exception to help create that opportunity here, we want to work with them in doing that. It's very important to understand we're not taking an adversarial position towards the NFL because we hope to be in business with them. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as well because there was some initial confusion about that. The other thing is that we, obviously the Coliseum specific plan, the two things that the NFL is going to, once we get to more formalized process, is the two questions that they always are going to have is their first question is who's going to pay for it, who's going to come up with the money, and you got to have that, and that has to be clear. And the second thing is where are they going to play, and so that has to be something that has to be very clear. So we'll address that. We obviously feel like the best location for sports, in my opinion, in our group's opinion, in the entire country is the Coliseum site, based on the transportation infrastructure, with Amtrak, BART, extension from the airport, 880, so on and so forth. I think nobody can argue that there's not a better place to watch sports and entertainment in the country than at the Oakland Coliseum site. So clearly, we will also want to make something else clear with our group. We are Oakland natives. We are so obviously our baseball team is the Oakland A's. So we don't have an interest in being in conflict at all with our baseball team. We have approached the A's with respect to just kind of their plans for the Coliseum site. We've had a conversation with them. We've talked to them. We've had a couple meetings with them. They're aware of our goals. We're clear that, and we made it very clear to them and to everybody else that we've gotten endorsements from, that this is a long process for us. We can't dictate when the NFL might have a team for sale or relocation. We're not interested in that per se, but we also definitely can't dictate to them when they're going to expand. So we can't tell them you have to expand at this date or we have a timeline. But what we are hoping is that they will look at our proposal seriously, get it in a position to get it vetted, and make sure that there's an opportunity for us to be right there. We've made it clear to everybody that this is a long process, and this would be a situation that if we are, I'm going to say when optimistically, that we're approved for franchise expansion, which we have the format for now. If we're approved for that, then at that point we would have to incorporate into that expansion process and that expansion application where we're going to play. So we would need to get that information and be clear on it. We know that there's movement at the site, and we don't want to be in conflict. We don't want to send any mixed messages from a narrative perspective. October 2nd, we planned on having a press conference where we would reveal not only our renderings of what we would like to see the site look like, and we also would be revealing our entire capital package and exactly how we would fund it. We will hopefully at that point also have the list that we will be submitting to the NFL. So our position is that this is an incredible time. It's a unique moment in history. We believe that Oakland and the alignment for Oakland with respect to its contributions to culture of civil movements and social justice, it's the perfect scenario for the NFL. We feel like this is a time where, the protests have occurred. The voices have been heard. And the truth is that what we're proposing is an action item. And we feel like, and I have to reinforce the fact that we believe that the NFL really likes this market. And I also, it's important to say that, when we build a stadium here, our goal will have to be to make it also a convention center. It'll have an educational institution connected to it. We want year-round movement. We believe we could be competitive with San Francisco from a convention perspective. So we also want to make sure that there's a sports and entertainment museum. There's a tremendous amount of wealth of talent that has come from Oakland that we would like to showcase. We would love to have a place to have a statue of Bill Russell and Ricky Henderson. People that have come from this community, Kurt Flood, that have come from this community that are dynamic and incredible, heroic people that have changed the face of sports and entertainment. So that's kind of where we are with it. We are very excited about the prospect that we're even being engaged. Obviously, when we sent the NFL the letter on June 16th, there's a myriad of reasons why they could have just completely rejected our proposal, but they didn't. And so that was encouraging because we know that it's a commodity that's in high demand. There's not a lot of them. So for us to have lost ours twice and to have an opportunity to have another one is something that we feel is very encouraging. The last thing I'll add is that I know that Robert Bobb just came on, and Robert Bobb is somebody who has agreed to help us with municipal engagement. As you may or may not know, he was the Oakland city manager, and he actually tried to move the A's to downtown. And I think 2002, and there's a lot of people would argue that if Robert Bobb would have been able to accomplish that in 2002, that we may still have all three of our sports teams potentially. That's just speculative. But Robert Bobb also went to Washington D.C. and helped bring the Nationals or the Expos to Washington, D.C., and they became the Nationals and built a stadium and was involved in that process. So I'm grateful that he's come on, and he's agreed to work within our group and do any kind of municipal support that he can offer from advice and consultation. So we're very grateful for that. So our team members, we have several people that are added to our team, and so we're growing that as we go. But on October 2nd, we're going to be revealing our entire package of how we're moving forward. We just wanted to take this opportunity to really just express the fact that we were engaged with the NFL, that it didn't die. We weren't rejected, and it is an ongoing set of communication. But we're going to need all of Oakland. We're going to need everybody with NFL experience. We're going to need our community behind us. We're going to need everything we have in order to bring this to fruition. So we're going to need support of our media. We're going to need support of our sports analysts. We're going to need support of anybody who's around and who's helpful. And I know that Robert Bob was also, I think Robert had hired Zinni for the Super Bowl Oakland deal. And so I think that we're talking about a person that has a lot of experience. So I'll just kind of turn it over. We have a person that I've wanted to kind of introduce as well. A young man who's running for District 7 City Council. He's and he has a vision that is very similar to ours. He has a vision of the Hagenberger Tourist Zone, where he wants to help revitalize the Hagenberger Hotel Row hopefully with an airport expansion and hospitality all down that leads up to the Coliseum site. So I'll let him kind of speak on that. He asked if he could engage. So I'll do that. And then after that, we'll open it up for questions and we'll go from there. So thank you guys again for joining us. I appreciate it. So Marshawn, if you want to go forward.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate this opportunity. It's this historic moment that we're even considering bringing a Black NFL team to Oakland. And you're talking to a person who played Division I football collegiately at the University of Tulsa. So I understand the importance of having sports in this town, in my hometown. I'm an Oakland native, born and raised. I went through all Oakland public schooling. I'm standing here as a family man, a community man, an advocate for the unhoused and housed families in Oakland. I'm standing here as a businessman who understands the value and importance of building wealth and maintaining ownership in the city you love and grew up in. My vision is that every family in Oakland has an opportunity to build real wealth with ownership. My hope is the opportunity to bring back the thousands of families that was gentrified, displaced, and outpriced in the city that they helped build. This is a new day for the town, a day where Black families, brown families can prosper again, a day where all families can prosper in Oakland and not on the backs of anyone. This is my vision. I stand here with the African American Sports and Entertainment Group in support of this project to bring a Black-owned NFL team to Oakland, using the Green Bay Packers model for cooperative ownership and development. It aligns with my vision to build a Hagenberger Tourist Zone in a multi-community business district that will rival Pier 39 in San Francisco, with businesses in zones from many cultures, including what Ray alluded to earlier, the sports museum, the local legend Star Walk, the convention center. But in addition, a kids zone, a garden zone, a Caribbean zone, a zone that highlight all the cultures of Oakland, that tells everybody in the world who we are, who helped build this city, and what we can become. This is about the town. Oakland is a prime city, prime for development, prime for Black equity, justice, and power. Prime to be the home of the first Black NFL team in the country, and it's prime time. Actually, that's what they used to call me in high school when I played football at the local high school in Oakland, Castlemont. Join me and support this endeavor by the African American Entertainment and Sports Group. Black investors, entertainers, wealthy individuals, you are needed for this. This is a life-changing moment in which we can get the community some economic justice, in which we are owed as the community who helped build this city that's actually being forced out. I'm the son of a City of Oakland employee for the Parks and Recreation Center for over 42 years. So I understand the history of being in the community, being a pillar in the community. That's my father. He was a community and still is a community pillar, cultivating boys to men. Actually, my uncle is as well. My uncle actually helped mentor Ray when he was youth. A youth from Oakland with the right mentorship and see what he became. This can be everybody in Oakland. The males out there who need that guidance, that mentorship, that opportunity to have financial justice, economic justice. This is the opportunity. So I'm asking everyone to join us in one of the biggest endeavors in your life and invest in Oakland so we can make Oakland a better place. Thank you for this opportunity. Peace, blessings, and I salute you. And as always, let's keep it Oakland.
Thanks, Marshawn. We're and I again, you know, your uncle took care of a lot of us at a Royal Park in Brookfield. Your dad, and you know, we're happy we went to the same elementary, Webster, and middle school, Frick, Castlemont, and are all on the same trajectory. Good luck with your doctorate. I know you have several degrees, and to see you come from Oakland Public Schools and to do what you've done, we're very grateful for. So thank you for joining us. I want to move it back to the process, and wanted to open up for questions. I'll do my best to answer every question I can. If there's a question that I feel will be better answered during the press conference on October 2nd, where we have much more of a comprehensive layout, I'd be happy to defer to that, but I'll do everything I can to answer any questions. So with that said, if you would like to ask a question, raise your hand. Our mediator that's in the box of the African American Sports Entertainment Group will call on you, and then I will do my best to answer your questions.
Hey folks, this is Ansar Hassan with ABC 7 News. I don't know how to raise my hand. Should I just put a question in the chat and you'll call on me, or should I just go now?
Why don't we just start with you?
Okay, so thanks for making time for this. A couple quick questions. First, just so I'm clear, the plan includes that you folks will build a new stadium. And if you are, what was the conversation that you had with the A's regarding that? The other question is, you know, you talk a lot about economic justice. So I understand the concept of having a Black-owned NFL team. How would this be different than any other team that we have right now? What does Black ownership mean for the community on the ground?
Those are great questions. So first and foremost, let me just say that we have talked to the A's. We've had conversations with them, and I think our conversations with the A's have been along the lines of what are their plans, what are our plans, and you know how can we want to make sure that we're not in conflict with either plan. Clearly, they have a team that's here. They have an institution that's been at that site for 50 years. But our question to them was, if your goal is to be at Howard Terminal, and if you're not going to build at the Coliseum, we're just trying to find out more about their overall objectives. So we're in the early discussions with respect to that. We definitely, want to continue our communication with them. And as our project matures, it's going to be important for us to work together, and to work with the city, and to work with, whatever institutions or municipalities that we have that can help us align. So that's my discussion with respect to the A's. As far as Black ownership and what that looks like, this is a really great question. And it's a question because as of right now, there is no Black ownership in a league that's over 70% Black. It's the same thing. I mean, it's a league that I think technically is 74% African American. There's no NFL owners that are Black. I think Black ownership, what we see it looking like, is we see it in a situation in which we can actually be at the table and we can be engaged in the conversations and we can create a circumstance where we have a direct impact on what happens in an industry that we are so heavily active in. We don't have that model yet, but our model would actually contribute to our community. The thing that's unique about the Coliseum site especially is that it's next to one of the most underserved communities in the United States of America. One of the highest poverty levels, one of the highest crime levels, once the lowest injection of education funds based on property values and property tax. So what ownership would look like for us is it would go beyond just us. It would be an opportunity for us to actually come to the table and inject and revisit and recycle the African-American dollar back into our community. That's our objective. And that's what would be different about Black ownership. You oftentimes during this entire social justice process have heard about economic equity and what that would look like. And I think that our community is in a position where we are huge consumers and it's time for us to become owners. And if we become owners, we can resolve a lot of the internal problems that we have within our own community. And the truth is that we don't need to necessarily be led or to have programs injected. If we were in a position to be able to fund, our own processes, it would be great. Like with me, I'm a businessman. I fund the Father Figure Project, which is a mentoring and tutoring program, self-funded, no government funds, self-funded by me and 3 other gentlemen who grew up in our East Oakland community that came back. And that's kind of what we believe African-American ownership would look like.
Next, we have Mike Bingham and then Zinni Abraham.
First and foremost, allow me to say that I'm proud and humbled to be invited to this meeting. I am not from Oakland. I live in Dallas, Texas. I have a relationship with Levant Aboulier, and COVID really destroyed our plans for me to visit Oakland on an extended basis this year. Looking forward to getting there as quickly as I can. First of all, when it comes to this opportunity, I know for a fact that Oakland has a fantastic base of sports fans. When it comes to the A's, the Warriors, and the Raiders. What happened to y'all, as far as the Raiders go, is an absolute travesty, period, end of story. But that being the case, I love the fact that y'all are looking to bring an NFL franchise back to Oakland. But I have a curiosity question, and please do not construe this as negativity. It's purely a curiosity question. Is the fan base in Oakland going to support a football team as it has for the past 47 years that is not silver and black and has commitment to excellence on the side of the helmet? That's just a question that I have. And I'd love to get an answer.
Yes.
Sure. I think I think that they absolutely will. And I think that if you think about Oakland and you think about the East Bay region, Oakland is really one of the only places that I think that could support an African-American owned football team, because I think that the culture of the Bay Area overall, from the standpoint of its diversity, lends itself to that. There are not a lot of places in this world, really, that has the level of diversity that Oakland has. And I think that the other truth is that I think that when you think about the first African-American owned football team, the first thing that pops into my mind is that we will not be able to sell enough merchandise throughout the rest of this country. I think it'll be something that people will come from other parts of the country to experience, much the way the Raiders had a national following and an international following. I think if this team ever went and did exhibition games in Europe and around the rest of the country, it would be incredible. I think just the entire process of this historic, sort of, for lack of a better term, a Jackie Robinson moment with an entire team, with a community that is really looking for this opportunity to show itself within this prospect is going to be overwhelming. And I think that absolutely the city of Oakland, the East Bay region, the Bay Area, it's a great town or a great region with a tremendous amount of understanding of culture and the importance of moving forward. So I think that absolutely it would.
I have one other question, and to your point, I'll be 50 years old this year. I cannot tell you how much Raider gear I bought in the late 80s and early 90s. That was just the time, and I certainly represented the Raiders as much as I represented the Cowboys, really. Moving on to another subject, one of the things that I've been doing for the last year and a half or so is raising capital for private equity and hedge fund projects across the country, particularly in qualified opportunity zones. Is the Oakland Coliseum in an opportunity zone at present? Does anyone know?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay. So if the development of the Coliseum is an opportunity zone, then that means I can tell by the confidence with which whoever answered. There has obviously been some research into the tax benefits that being in an opportunity zone would afford a project of this magnitude. But additionally, what's planned for further development beyond just the museum and the Coliseum? Will there be affordable housing? Will there be perhaps hotels? Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And then that'll be it for me today.
Sure. Yeah, that would definitely be part of the plan. And first of all, I think Zenny answered it, and it is in an opportunity zone. There as well as some infrastructure zones, and there are other things that can play a role in benefiting and allowing for development to run smooth there. But equally as important, here's the thing: the Coliseum. If you come to Oakland and you visit, it's in East Oakland. It's in District 7. And the truth is that if you think about it from an African-American perspective, it's one of the final places in where you have the highest concentration of African-Americans in the city that hasn't been developed yet. And if you look at the Coliseum site, it is really the opportunity for our community to hang cranes. And we want to make sure that not only is it meaningful from a sports perspective and a convention center perspective, but we want to make sure that the ancillary development is clear, that there are tons of people who want to inject themselves into Oakland. So there will be expansion that will go. I think, Marshawn hit on his vision of the Hagenberger corridor, and you'll see it when you come here. But we also hope that the goal for development of the Coliseum is to expand development throughout all of East Oakland and really go east, instead of west, and really go all the way from the Coliseum site, go down to East 14th, make a left and a right, go down to Bancroft, make a left and a right, and go down to MacArthur and make it a left and a right. And our goal in development, and it goes back to the question of what would make Black ownership different, is that we don't want to develop our community and have everybody have to move and leave. And that's we want to develop our community, make it beautiful, and allow our community to remain there. And my family occupies 14 homes between 78th and 82nd Avenue, and they're homeowners, and they've been homeowners since the 50s. And we want to see our property values increase. And when our property values increase, the contribution towards education increases. So it's all relative. And yes, there's opportunity for development throughout East Oakland.
Zenny Abraham.
Hey, first, thank you, Ray, for inviting Zenny 62 Media to join this press conference. And second, just a couple of questions. First of all, have you been able to identify an NFL owner that will be a champion for this, so that it, to some degree, eases the vetting process, the voting process, the hand-holding process. You need a hand-holding process. And as to the matter of the community model, have you or anyone else working with you developed a spreadsheet model or some type of model or system dynamics model of the entire project? I'm not asking this to be flipped, but to determine what your internal rate of return would be. And the reason I ask is because in all of these efforts in the past, they've all unraveled because everyone focused on how much money they thought someone else had, as opposed to the fact that you're really building a business and you want to see if that business can sustain itself and determine where your gaps are. And I know one person who would agree with this is the person who hired me to work on the Super Bowl, and that's the man I call boss to this day, Robert Bobb. I think he's a tremendous asset to the team. But has that happened at this point? Thanks, Ray.
Sure. So thank you, Zenny. So the first question, with respect to, let me just answer the second question first, because let me answer the first question. So as far as identifying a potential principal owner that will be in alignment with, the community's needs and will be in alignment with the voting process. And look, at the end of the day, we don't want to trade one billionaire for another. And at the end of the day, if somebody is coming in and they are wanting to own a team in Oakland, we're encouraging them that this is a community project. That we've lost our team twice here. And so it would be very difficult for us to be in a situation where we would have an owner who, just from a business perspective, might see a better opportunity for its team somewhere else from their perspective.
Oh, no, I don't mean that way. I'm being misunderstood. I'm talking about all the NFL politics I learned, I initially got, and I was taught by a late Alo Casal, the Raiders. Okay. So I'm talking about the way the NFL works internally in terms of having someone to champion. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. This is a entirely different ballgame. Excuse me. Yeah.
Got it. So yes, I think that, we don't know what the NFL politics are specifically, but you people like who are involved in the NFL would know better than we would. But one of the things that they allowed us to look at in their framework is they cited the Rooney Rule. And they talked specifically about expanding the Rooney Rule into ownership. And when we submit our list, because the NFL will have to vet this list of potential prospective NFL owners, Zenny, I'm assuming that they're going to look at this person from top to bottom. I'm assuming that they're going to look at, the alignment of how these, what this person might have in common with different NFL owners. We know that the NFL, and I'm trying to be very careful here, it's a very tight-knit group of people. Typically, you either inherit a team or you have done business with somebody and you're a billionaire. And so we don't run in those circles per se. And so from all we can control is they've asked us to compile a list. So we're gonna continue to research this process, and we're gonna submit a list of prospective NFL principals. And Zenny, all I can say is that my goal and my thought is that they will fall in alignment with the NFL's vetting process. And so we hope that, that will happen. And that's what I can say from that standpoint. With respect to looking at it from a community perspective and a community-owned team, which we obviously get very excited about, the prospect of the community owning the team and having a Green Bay model, because that would allow
if I may, I apologize, but
go ahead.
I want to be very specific here. I'm asking, has anyone made a spreadsheet model to determine the internal rate of return under a community model versus another one? And I asked that okay.
No. But we will have that spreadsheet done, and we'll have the exact way that'll be capitalized on October 2nd. So I'll let you take a look at it before that, because I know that that's something that you could give some valuable input in. It'll be a document I'd
I'll be blunt.
willing
It's
to.
something I've done.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Levant, you said that I thought that there was questions from Jason Cole.
Ray, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
Jason Cole.
fine. Hey, Jason.
Okay. Hey, thank you for doing this. I have several questions. You talk about wanting to cooperate with the A's on the Coliseum site,
Mhm.
but it seems that there's some urgency from them to develop the site sooner than later if they're going to get their project going on a new stadium in the marina area. How fast do you have to act, and how much conflict do you have to resolve ultimately to make sure that you can somehow work through the needs of both teams? I mean, because historically Oakland has had some issues getting projects off the ground with large plots of land. I mean, the Oakland Naval Hospital is a primary example of land that has sort of stood still in time and not been developed fast enough. So where do you get this going so that there's not this long-term lag in developing this property for one use or the other somehow,
Right.
some way?
Got it. That's a great question. Well, first of all, we know that the A's are currently working with the county to buy their portion of the land. And we know that the county's portion of the land is set to finish its look on October 5th. So we know that that's a time where once that look is completed, just based on the public contract, the contract escalates at that point. We know that the city is negotiating right now with the A's for the A's to buy their portion of the city land. Now, I think that's where I think it's going to. We've talked to and had meetings with and been involved with discussions with several community organizations, particularly in the area surrounding the Coliseum, who definitely want to make sure that there's a place marker put at the site for the potential of a NFL football team. So our goal is to work together with the A's to try to figure out what that dynamic looks like. Like I said, myself and Robert Bob met with Dave Cavill and Taj Tashambe from the A's with respect to their objectives. We kind of talked about, we made it very clear what our objectives are. And so I think that the goal for us would be this. There's no guarantee that we're going to get an NFL football team, and I just want to be very candid. I mean, that is not a guarantee, and we've told all the community groups that we're working with that have an interest in supporting our project at the Coliseum site. We have an enormous amount of community support, as you could imagine, especially within the African American community, but just across the board. But we've told them that the process for us to get approved for an expansion franchise and then to identify a development scenario, it could be 3 to 4 years. I mean, it could be a long time. We know that the A's are set to play there for 3 to 4 years, because even if they did get access to Howard's Terminal and made that deal work, they're still going to play at the Coliseum. Now, the question becomes the land use and what it gets entitled for. And if the A's, for some reason, don't end up at Howard Terminal, do they land at the Coliseum and they build their stadium there? So those are the kind of discussions that we're having. And I'm trying to give you the best answer I can, Jason, is that October 5th, we'll know more about the county. Then after that, we're going to know more about what the city is doing with their portion and what they are trying to do with their portion. We know that there's a lot of community support for our project, and we know that there's a lot of community people that want the A's to build at the Coliseum. They also, there's different scenarios. So we're going to be working closely with them as our plan matures and as we develop this process. So I can give you a more clear answer right around probably the middle of October.
As a follow-up,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, as a follow-up to that, Libby Schaff was not always particularly supportive of the idea of the NFL staying or finding a way to bring it back. Not at least not on their terms, which are usually onerous. So my question is, do you see change within the city, within city government coming to support this? Or is that pressure going to have to come from the community groups that you're talking about, putting pressure on the city to support this idea? How is it going to sort of happen?
Let me say this. There was during the East Bay Oakland East Bay Democratic candidate forum, they had all 3 candidates for at large and all 5 candidates for District 7. And the question of the NFL, would you support an African-American owned NFL team in Oakland at the Coliseum site? And the 2-part question was, first of all, every single candidate said absolutely. They would work with us. Absolutely. They would love to see a NFL team in Oakland. They would love to see especially an African-American, historic African-American owned football team in Oakland. They would love it. They would love to see that. And equally as important, they all said that they would be happy to work together with our group to try and create a place marker at the Coliseum while we went through the exploration process with the NFL. So that's just going to be important for us to work together with the A's on, because we just want to make sure that there's availability for our project. And so that's important. But if I can just gauge the level of political support from the candidate forums, and it's a public document on YouTube. If you get a chance to watch it and you go through the process of how they all answered the question, overwhelmingly, they're going to support it. And to be quite honest with you, I think that the mayor would be in support of this historic opportunity. I think that, it's different from just a regular, just a group of guys wanting to have a football team in Oakland. I think it is different. And so I think that you're going to find that the political climate in Oakland is going to be very supportive of this, because I think it's something that we've already seen get nationwide support. When you retweeted the June 10th tweet, it went from SF Gate to Houston Chronicle to, I was doing national interviews for 2 straight weeks. I think that there's an incredible amount of momentum and support for this concept. So I believe that the city would be in support of it. I think that I think the mayor would be in support of it, as long as they can see, a favorable interaction with the NFL and capital, and capital commitments that are real.
Ray, if I may, the mayor of Oakland did tell me twice that she's supportive of your efforts. She's just been busy with the pandemic, so you don't have to worry about that.
Great, thank you, Zenny.
Yeah.
That's relieving.
Okay, one last, Ray, just a really quick follow-up. I just want to make sure. Have you been in contact with Stephen Ross about this? Because I know he's invested a fair amount in Oakland itself. And just to clarify this ownership model, because you're talking about Green Bay, but you're referring also to a list of owners who would have to be reviewed by the league. Those sound a little bit like 2 different models. Are you talking about having a group of core owners who are funding it, and then doing the Green Bay model where you're sort of selling, I don't want to call them empty shares, but they're non-voting, non-power shares of a team to get community support? Is it some kind of combination? Can you clarify that at this point in time, or are you? No. What status are you at, basically?
Yeah, no, that's right. There would be two different. Actually, there's 3 models. There's the model of 30% ownership, where that's the rule of the NFL at this moment. They have one principal, one person sits in the seat at the owners' meeting. It's not 2. They have to have 30%. They do 30% of the purchase of the in cash. There's a very specific lending restriction. So that's the rule now. So you're talking about somebody who would have to come out $600 million if that's what the franchise fee, if it was 30% of it. So there's that model that we proposed to them. Then we also proposed a group economics model where there may be a high net worth value individual who may not have, may not be a billionaire, but maybe they have hundreds of millions of dollars. We were asked to get an exemption. There's a limit of 24 additional investors that you can have. And if we got that exemption there, then we would potentially go up to 100 or 200 investors that could be part of that group. And that's the group economics model. That's option 2. Option 3 is the Green Bay model, where we come in and we say, we're going to raise enough money to pay the franchise fee. We're going to operate as a community owned. There's 40 board members, I think 47 board members on Green Bay, and a president and CEO. I think that they've sold 5 million shares or something like that. There's like 300, and I can't remember I think 47,000 investors or something along those lines. I don't have the exact numbers, but that model is a model that we would take for the football team. And then obviously there would be a different investment scenario with respect to the stadium and the ancillary development and how that would work. There's group economics models through SPACs, through different things that are coming available with current situations that could be available to us. Opportunity zones, like Michael talked about. So we feel pretty comfortable that if we could get to the Green Bay model, we probably wouldn't have to worry much about, raising billions of dollars. We would focus on that and probably get some interjection of that type of, we'll have that kind of assessment soon. So I think there was one last piece of your question. I'm sorry, I kind of went off.
It was just Stephen. It was just a quick thing on Stephen Ross.
Right.
Yes or no?
Yeah, we have not talked to Stephen Ross yet. We've been just only communicating with the senior executive at the NFL, and that's kind of where, at this point, we have not communicated with any owners.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mr. Cobb.
Yeah, my name is Paul Cobb. I want to, first of all, congratulate you, Mr. Bobbitt, for such a wonderful presentation. And I want to thank Sandra Varner for sending me the press release. I have been in discussion with the potential investors at that level that you talked about. I like the idea of the 3 models of community ownership approaches. I think that given the time constraints and given the points that Zenny has made, I think there needs to be a strategy both of goals as well as a strategy of means. If the strategy is to get a Black corporate entity as a player at the table around the Coliseum complex and the development beyond, it would seem to me that there needs to be a dual level strategy. One is to solve the political decision question between now and October 5th, to actualize the commitment where a Black entity, such as the one that you are projecting now, could come to the table to seek an option to get control or to purchase the city's position, so that whoever it is, whether it's the A's as a tenant or a future NFL team, we then need to look at the possibility of a Black corporate entity becoming a landlord of the facility, which would allow us to both play the NFL investment card as well as to negotiate with the A's. I don't see it as us meaning the Black community and those who want to see a Black equity and a Black economic development opportunity come out of this. I don't see us waiting on and being subservient to the whim of what the A's want to do. I see them as being at a casino playing all the possibilities, whether it's the Port of Oakland, the terminal site, or whether it's to stay there. Since we do know there is one thing for sure, they are going to be there for 4 more years as a tenant, regardless of what goes down. So given that, and given the resources that you have at the table now, you got Robert Bob, the preeminent city manager, planner, and knowledgeable person, and you got Henry Gardner, who's there now handling the situation for the Coliseum, I think that we ought to make a play to insert the Black community's position as Black ownership matters at owning the facility and the site, so that you have option level equity to control the future development of the surrounding community. To me, that the voice is strengthened if you have a piece of ownership of the land and the Coliseum itself, and then you're able to leverage, to partner, and to invite potential investors because you're coming from the perspective of part owner. So I don't know. I don't want to throw cold water on your thinking or anything. But I'd like to get your reaction to that. I'd like to get Mr. Bob's reaction to that as well.
Well, first of all, let me say I'm honored to have you on the call as a legend, in our community. I have to recognize that before I say anything else with the Oakland Post and just everything that you do and have done. So I just want to thank you for that, first of all. Secondly, that is a option that is most certainly available. We talked about that. That was proposed to us by 2 different city council people. And they said, well, are you open to making an offer on the city side of the land? And so just so you know, when that question was initially answered, the capital position of our group was, well, if the A's are going to own the county side of it, and we buy the city side, then it's going to be difficult if you invested that level of money into it and you didn't have full control of it. How would that work? What scenario would that look like? So, but now that the situation has matured more and we've gotten more information, we have more of an understanding and clarification on kind of what directions we can go in, what options may be available to us. That is certainly something that we would be happy to have the community as a whole get involved in communicating and talking to us about and coming up with the game plan and the plan of action that would make sense.
Right.
So
if I may,
so that's
just as a point of advice, when we were trying to bring the Super Bowl here, I created the Oakland Alameda County Sports Commission. And what we had to do, we didn't have the money to buy in, but what we had as a contract that was voted on, they voted for no action, that would have allowed us to have control of the Coliseum. So Paul is 1,000,000% right about, maybe I should say 1,000,000,000% right about a corporate entity, right? But I'm just trying to give you an idea that
that's a great
institutional
point.
Memory. There's a lot of this road that we've actually hoed before.
Got it. Robert, did you want to respond, Robert Bob?
Yes, I think that what Paul put on the table is the most powerful piece for this opportunity. We can provide African American ownership for the city's side of the site. It gives the organization more options than it currently has. It gives us the option of bringing an NFL team to the table. If that were not to occur, it gives the option of further developing that site for the benefit of, for the East Oakland community, not only around sports, but also around mixed-use development. And that is probably the most powerful economic development opportunity for the African American community in Oakland, because there's not another site where that level of acreage that is in the ownership, to my knowledge, and maybe you and Zinni could correct me. At least during my tenure in Oakland, there was never an African American business, either individual or corporate group, that owned such a prestigious location site within the city of Oakland. So I wholly endorse what Paul put on the table. I mean, I think that's a strategy that we should, spend a lot of time focusing on. And then I'd like to go back to what the first question that Zinni raised earlier on, I think coming up with an economic development, an economic spreadsheet strategy, not only around sports, but around development and what that looks like, given the incentives, not just the opportunity zone, but the new state legislation, which has gone into effect in California, makes development even more of a reality. So, the extent to which we can put together a group with the resources to make a pitch to the city for the acquisition and not just have the city consider only one option for acquiring its site. The only option on the table currently in the acquisition of the city's component of the site is in fact the owners of the Oakland Athletics, at least to my knowledge.
So and I think that answers a great point, Robert, and I appreciate you, bringing that up. And look, one of the things that we wanted to do was give information, but one of the things that we always want to get is information. And I think that, the more that we hear from, leaders of our community with respect to the community's overall perspective, we enjoy it and we're going to act on it. And at the end of the day, I visualized this concept along with Levant and Brian and Kareem and others. But we don't own this concept. Our community owns this concept, and our community owns the scenario where we find ourselves in. So that's kind of how we feel about it. We feel very strongly about it. In the beginning, I reached out to multiple people. And we're just maturing the process at this time. So let's move forward.
Can I make an implementation suggestion?
Go ahead.
In the interest of the flow of the conversation.
Sure.
I think that you, Brother Bobbitt, and Brother Bob, I'll let Bob Bobbitt, and Zenny, since Zenny knows the mayor, ought to sit down with the mayor and with the city leaders or whatever the appropriate political powers, and to start moving towards seeking the opportunity to get an option on a Black community, minority community ownership model as the first step in the political decision-making process, so that you can sit at the table. Because I think it is faulty thinking to be wondering whether or not we're going to step on the toes of the A's, or whether they'll be offended and they have a part ownership, and what will they do? If you are the part owner, they become a tenant of the Coliseum area, and they don't, if it's a community perspective where the community is wholeheartedly behind this, the A's don't want to be in either the political or the economic position of being blocking community participation and community development. Because if by getting an equity stake of owning the land, you say your main purpose is to make sure that the surrounding community is developed for affordable housing, for jobs, and for minority businesses, to make it a viable concept. Do you think the A's want to be on record as saying they are against that for whatever purpose? I don't think so. And so I think that there needs to be a positive perspective of Black ownership, so they're in a position to negotiate. And rather than looking at it from the perspective of worrying about whether the A's will like us or not is an irrelevant position. It's just like in friendly competition. We are trying to get an ownership to develop the goals for the community. And if the A's want to, they've told me, I've spoken to Cabal, and I've spoken to Taj and others. They say they are in favor of community development. Well, this is an opportunity to put it to the test. And I think we ought to look at it optimistically. Let's get an equity stake. Let's follow the lead of experienced, talented people who no one can question, like Robert Bob and Henry Gardner and yourself, Mr. Bobbitt and Zenny, and let's put a plan together to get an ownership stake and then go to the community to say, look, here is a community ownership model. Let's all invest and buy in to make it happen. I think the A's would be, they can get leverage in the future, saying that they were the first pro team to fully support and take a joint seat with the community ownership model. I see a plus for them to be supportive of our move rather than worrying about whether or not they're going to feel offended for us wanting to come to the table.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And we'll make that a point of action through this process.
Robert Bob, do you think that's a possibility of something of that kind of approach of trying to get our notion on the table?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime that, Ray and his team, they've put together an opportunity around the NFL. He's reached out to the NFL. He has a letter from the NFL in its response to the initial. No one knows the NFL and all of its ins and outs better than Zenny. He's been an irritant to some of the people in the NFL, I might add. But,
and he's even been an irritant to me too.
As well as to me. But no one knows the sports world and the intricacies of it.
Hey, come on back on my show.
and the other side of it is, but I'll put that side. I'll put the Zenny understanding the sports world aside, but no one understands. He can run the numbers and he understands the economics. But to your point, Paul, to help Ray and his vision of what he wants to do, I think having ownership or at the table on that other whatever number of acres. It's a large site. I think Ray, what's the other? The city's acreage is.
I think it's 112 plus 38, so it's about 140. Literally, it's about 150.
But even if what's the county's acreage?
And if you add in home base and the Malibu site, which is owned by the city but not the county, that's another 38 and 12 as well. So
that's right.
It's a large.
But even if the county moves forward with its sale to the A's, the city is still at the table. So there's an opportunity to move to the city and then follow the model that Paul put on the table, which I think anytime African Americans can control and own major parcels of real estate, it puts them in a better position to do great things for the community overall and still make money. At the end of the day, it's a capitalist venture, but it's also there's a lot of social equity involved as well.
Yep.
Agreed.
Ray, can I inject something real quick?
Yeah.
My name is Levant. I'm the one of the co-members of the AASEG. One of the things that we do have media here, I wanted to be clear about something. About a week or two ago, Cavill, the president of the Oakland A's, was on Zenny Abraham's show. And one of the things that he was very clear about, the question was asked to him, does the Oakland A's Howard Terminal development, is it contingent or reliant on owning the Coliseum site? And Dave Cavill was his answer unequivocally was no, it does not. The Howard Terminal project is not reliant on owning or developing the Coliseum site. So that's important to know.
Hey, thanks for watching, by the way.
That you're welcome. It's important to know that, and the media needs to be aware of that as well. Our development of the Coliseum site will in no way impede the Oakland A's Howard Terminal development. They can develop Howard Terminal if that's what they choose to do, but it is not necessary for them to own the Coliseum site. So we are not at conflict with them. I think what's happened is that prior to us coming to the table, there was no other option or no other plan that had been presented at the Coliseum, but now we're here. So now we're providing a very powerful, viable, community-vested project that will serve the entire community and, by extension, the entire city of Oakland. So we're not in conflict with the A's. Actually, we're actually doing, in our opinion, we're helping bring another alternative to the table that, in our opinion, is more robust. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the media, because I know there are questions. There are a lot of people saying that the A's have to own the Coliseum in order to build Howard Terminal. Dave Cavill said unequivocally, no, they are two separate projects, and we believe we're presenting a viable alternative.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Since he mentioned the media, I just want to say quickly, I would like to get a response from Zenny as to what Robert Bobb said, and I would like to ask you, Ray, would you say, for the purposes of this discussion, whether or not you and Robert Bobb and Zenny and whoever else you deem necessary as a part of the team that you're leading would move towards trying to get us in a position for the options that we're now discussing. I'm talking about soon, before now and October 5th, so that we can present the idea of an alternative proposal to be put on the table.
To answer your question, I think Mr. Bobb is right on, absolutely. And I think what's being laid out here, interestingly, in this fascinating type of forum, is something that probably Ray didn't expect to happen. But I think, Ray, you've got a model, you know? Yeah.
No, and look, I'm completely and 100% in, and we'll commit to that. And like Levant said, who kind of co-founded this movement with us, we I think that we're clear on the information. So we will do that, and thank you for suggesting it so forcefully, because sometimes it takes somebody to hold a mirror up to you and throw some cold water on you and say, hey, let's move. So, and we are in a moment right now where we have to be unapologetic for our community and where we've been and where we want to go. And this is an action item. This is not, the voices have been heard, the protests have occurred. This is an action item that needs to come from this. So I know Chris DeBenedetti has been patiently waiting to ask some questions. So I'll move to Chris.
Ray, before I have to jump off the call, but I'm all in with respect to whenever you want to move forward with the meeting with the city and Zenny and others, as we've had meetings with the aides and others in the community. So I'm happy to do whatever I can from afar to assist.
Thank you, Robert. We appreciate you.
And all I would like to say is, Robert Bobb, do your job. Go ahead and lead us.
And Mr. Bobb speaks for me. Mr. Bobb speaks for me as well. I'm happy to, that, Ray. I'm happy.
Absolutely. Chris DeBenedetti.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting this. I actually have some questions for Mr. Bobb, but maybe I can reach him later. Ray, I'll just check in with you. You've talked before about how the stadium will be financed, and you'll probably talk about this further on October 1st or 2nd, the next time you host another press conference. But I understand the stadium will be privately financed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And then we know that Mr. Bobb is, this is something I would have asked him, but maybe you could shed some light on it. It's pretty straightforward, but what role do you see him specifically playing? We know that he's, heavily connected with the city of Oakland from his years here, but what other sort of role or connections would he bring? Nationally or locally?
I think I can speak for him safely and tell you that he said to me, Ray, I want to make history. I'm absolutely 100% committed to this process in any way that you need me. I want you to know that from a municipal negotiation perspective, from, stadium development perspective, from capital perspectives, from negotiating proper capital, from combined development, where different developers may develop different portions. So he's really experienced at all of those from a municipal and a negotiation perspective. So that'll be kind of where he will really kind of live. But he said he's willing to, he's willing to do everything he can.
Okay. Thank you.
You have any? Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Looks like
think
in the chat from Keith Burbank from Bay City News, he had a question. Would you want to buy the A's portion of the Coliseum land if they do buy it?
so meaning if they do buy the county's portion.
Yes, that's what it looks like. Yes. Will we be on the option to purchase their portion if they decided to continue with the sale and then, sell it off?
Right.
Hey, can I break in here, Ray, with that real quick, if I may? I think that there's an alternative to that, so I don't think that's best to answer it that way right now, because there's an inefficiency there I don't want to get into. So that's
well,
open.
yeah,
Okay.
I think the answer to that question, Kareem specifically, and I appreciate the input, Zenny, is at this moment, I think that what we're taking from here as an action item, with the tremendous amount of community support that we have, is a expedited and urgency on identifying a framework for the city's portion and to work within that process. And that's what we'll pursue first. So if we can revisit that at a later time, we'd be happy to revisit that, but I don't want to make, any extension of commitments at all. I'm willing to always kind of take direction. So I think Jason Cole had a question. Okay. Jason?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on mute for a second. I apologize. Is there any indication that the A's are for sale?
I have not heard that personally. I don't know if they are. I have heard that they're fully committed to Oakland and fully committed to staying here, and that's what I've heard. That's all I can say. I don't have any indication whether they are or not.
Would there be any advantage to having if you're going to go this far to try and bring in a football team? And I understand that this is an even larger financial commitment, but is there any advantage to buying them as part of the package to make this work?
Well, I think that if there was an opportunity to do that, I can tell you that I had a conversation with a group that was interested in finding out about the A's or about sports in Oakland just in general, and so I think that if there was an opportunity there, I think that would be something that we would be happy to discuss. But at this moment, we're just focused on the potential prospect for the NFL coming here, and we also are working on the prospect of a WNBA team at the arena. So there's a group that's active with the Capitol that's interested in that we're working with that contacted us. So it seems like since we started this process, we've got a lot more engagement just overall. But our goal is to keep professional sports in Oakland, period, and to do everything we can to make that happen. So, but that's a good prospect, and if it comes up, I think we would absolutely be happy to incorporate that somehow.
Thank you.
Asad had a question.
Yes, he says you mentioned several times about lots of community support, and he was wondering who are some of the big endorsements.
So we were endorsed by obviously the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce, which is really important. That was great to have, as well as the Oakland East Bay Democratic Club, the East Oakland Stadium Alliance, who is a group that we just recently started working with. My father, as you guys may or may not know, is the Oakland Assembly, comes from Oakland Assembly. He was part of the original group of laborers, the labor organization that built cars at the Eastmont Mall, then at Durant Square, then to Fremont. Many of them have moved to Kansas City and Oklahoma, but they're all many from East Oakland. But my father was a 40-year union, and so we have 6 union endorsements as well for our project. We have the East Oakland Youth Development Project. We have the East Oakland Youth Violence Project. We have the Economic Community Collaboration Project in East Oakland. We have several community members, family members, friends. I mean, the endorsement list with respect to the African American community is too long to recite. And I could give you a formal list if necessary, but again, it's enormous.
Ray?
Everything looks good. Yeah, any more questions from anyone?
I just
If
want
not,
This is Ansar Hassan again with ABC7. Sorry, I'm just jumping in.
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Bobbitt, the list that you provided is fine. I know that there's a lot of buy-in and support for what you guys are doing. I think, the whole issue of Black ownership is pretty self-evident, especially in the current climate. But what do you feel like some of the major obstacles are going to be? I mean, I know you have a strong team together. You've worked hard to put this plan together. What are your biggest concerns?
I mean, I think just anybody in business, the number one concern that you're going to have is your capital. And that's really, and the one thing that if you look at our plan and the options that we presented to the NFL, we really created a situation where it was going to be hard to say no to us. Because like I said, if you have 614 billionaires in America and you have 6 that are African American, technically, if you were just looking at proportionately how many there should be if there was economic equity, we would have 82 people to choose from. And the question is the NFL going to be open to group economics? Are they going to allow us are they going to give us an exemption to perform group economics? That's something that's going to be important for our community to step up and do. And I think Mr. Cobb's suggestion is a beginning to that process. And so I think that the package of the economic and capital package is always a challenge, just how it's put together. And the Green Bay model, obviously, if we were allowed to do that, that would make raising funds for the football portion. It would be not easy, but it would definitely be reachable. Then you have to look at the stadium portion and the ancillary development portion. But that's where you have the group economics situation working again, and you have Robert Bob, who can negotiate cross development opportunities within the community, and so that type of thing. And you have I think Michael Bingham had mentioned the opportunity for opportunity zones, but all of that research has been done and is being done, with the exception of the community model that Zinni had said that he already has like maybe a blueprint for. But we will be more clear on that and have more of our clear capital approaches by October 2nd, which is October 1st, which is the date that we put out, and that the date that we're working with to develop a list of investors, of potential principal owners. The second thing that I think would be the difficulty is the political timing, and making sure that we execute quickly and that we move now. And, like much of the information that's been shared on this call, is there has to be a willingness community-wise. I think Jason Cole brought it up. I think, and then I think Paul Cobb brought it up in the opposite, which is we can't wait to find out what other people are doing to control the destiny of what we're doing. And so that's important. So timing, capital, because the NFL is going to need a secured site. Obviously, the last thing we would ever want is for them to suggest, or for us to lose the opportunity to develop the Coliseum site. And so I think timing and moving expeditiously, collaboration, but those are the two main things that I think would be the things that I see as obstacles, but not obstacles that can't be resolved, because when you have people like Robert Bob in place that has access to so much municipal negotiation and understanding of how to make these things happen and work, when you have guys like Billy Anderson from Stanford, who's part of our team now, that can put together packages very quickly with that level of quality, and like you said, you have Henry Gardner in place. You have Zenny, who understands the NFL. You have several people who are within our community that really understand how this process works. And so I don't think that there'll be obstacles that we can't achieve, but nonetheless, obstacles.
Ray, may I offer something real quick?
Go.
There is a tendency here I see for some representing the media to think this is going to be a Green Bay model and then to go and do research and adopt it and write something. Don't do that. If you do that, you'll be making a big mistake, and I'll very rapidly call you on it, okay? Wait, because there are a lot of moving parts to this, and we're not going to screw it up, all right? But don't go out there ahead of us and think you understand what we're going to do before we do it. Thank you.
Thanks for reinforcing that, Zenny. And again, we have to reinforce that we presented 3 options to the NFL. If one of the high net worth individuals within our community comes and makes a commitment to own and develop, and within the with the spirit of helping the entire Oakland community, obviously that is an NFL model that's currently in place. And the group economics piece of allowing for there to be a exemption on the number of individuals who can invest together. If that exemption can be made, then that's a model. And then the Green Bay model is an alternative model. So, and I'm telling you this because we presented this letter and presented this process to the NFL because we didn't want for them to say, well, okay, show me your billionaire, and then we can't produce a billionaire that's willing to commit to put that kind of equity into our community and build this out and say, well, unfortunately, you're disqualified immediately based on that process. So we were thinking when we went through this, and we said, okay, if that happens, then we need to have a couple more options available. We know that the Green Bay model is actually occurring within the NFL. And we know that the group economics piece is something that the African-American community is very engaged in at this point and working together more on. So let me just say this, and I'll wrap up with this. We are really excited about the prospects. We're really excited about the fact that because the NFL could have completely just outright rejected our proposal, which I'm sure has happened to a lot of cities. But I do think that this is a moment where there's an opportunity for the NFL to really kind of benefit from this moment in history. And we see what their players are doing. We see what the NBA is doing. We see that nobody wants to just stop this thing at the protests and our voices. We want to see the process of economic participation and equity be realized. And so I see this as an action item. And me being born and raised in East Oakland, and my family, my grandmother helped bring Pastor Smith to Allen Temple, her circle. And then she's been a member there since the 50s, and her next door neighbor is Gladys Green, has been, raised Father Jay, who God bless him. But we're deep rooted East Oakland families that are directly connected to this community and to this site. And just in conclusion, I would say that when I was working with some of the fan groups, they would say, well, I never saw you at tailgates or any at Raider games or anything like that, or Warriors games. I said, well, I never had the money to go to those games. I have an economic relationship with that site. Since there's sold concessions there, I sold things around the Coliseum as the entrepreneur of the family. But I never went and rooted for the teams. I always watched them on TV, or we watched the blimp, or we got on my grandmother's roof, who lived 77 to Rosedale. We could hear the announcements from her windows. But we had 4 homes on 69th Avenue, and we used to allow people to park there all season. It's always been an economic relationship with that site, always. And so this is an opportunity for me personally, and for the group that we've assembled to elevate that and escalate it into something really positive. And I just wanted to thank everybody for coming on, giving their input, the questions that were asked. I hope I've done a good job at being as informative as possible. But we definitely want to move forward and take some action out of this and move expeditiously to eliminate some of the hurdles that we might have. You have to unmute. You can unmute. I think.
Yes, I would like to second what Zenny said in terms of being a member of the media and so forth. I would like to second and underscore what Zenny said, because those of us that have been approached by those with the economic means to make this happen, for us to float their names prematurely and in a forum like this will cause the media to, in a frenzy, to go off and try to deal and create an alternative side story that will distract us in this effort. I think that we ought to keep the focus on trying to get to become a player at the site, because once you do that, you're able to talk about NFL, you're able to talk about the WNBA, and you're able to talk about other and the Major League Baseball League as well. So the site ought to be the focus between now and October 5th, and in the intermediate time from there. And if we can keep our eyes on that. I know that the Post will not publish any stories about this Zoom call, and will encourage our other media outlets to understand and try to not derail the process by overhyping it with the desire to get some sort of preliminary scoop.
Thank you. That's an excellent reinforcement. We're here obviously in a very preliminary stage, and we are under NDAs with certain Capitol people. But yeah, we are definitely, and I can say this is that
now he says that I'm on live stream. Oh well.
But I can say this is that it's been an informative process. I think before I talked to Clarence Thomas and Kitty Epstein, I had a different perspective. So, and the more you talk to people and the more you get into the community and understand what people's interests are, like I said, I had a different view of this situation, and then this gives me an additional view. So, I've been appreciative of all the input. Like I said, when I talked to Clarence Thomas and Kitty Epstein, they gave me some color that was really important as we maneuver through this process, and I appreciate the additional input, and I'll move forward and connect with everybody. So thank you again, and particularly your suggestion to move towards equity immediately on the site, Mr. Cobb. So, yeah. All right. With that said, we're going to wrap up this. We are going to be doing a press conference on October 2nd, where we will have a much more matured package of exactly, we will have renderings of what we would like to see the site look like. We have a well-respected architect who's working on it. So we'll be moving that forward, and thank you to everybody, and have a blessed day.
Yeah, thank you, Ray, for inviting me. And then the spirit of Chadwick Boseman, I say Wakanda forever. So I think that's
Amen.
Appropriate, So
Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Well, folks, we are here. I know we're still live, and I think that part is removed, and we're back. So there you go. Let's take, I think, Kevin Cole says, I feel there's going to be an issue between the ladies in this group. One moment. Hello, sir. I'm going to call you right back because I'll call you right back. Okay. Right back. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I know Paul had no idea that I think the press conference is a press conference. You have a press conference, you have cameras and you're filming what's going on, right? It wasn't, it had the feel for some, I think like Paul, that there was some sort of private meeting, but I was always cognizant of the fact that this was a public meeting. That there are a lot of moving parts here, and there are a lot of possibilities for error, of course, but I want to commend Ray Bobbitt for getting as far as he has. I really do. Michael Scott, I hope this plan works. Oakland needs football, and the NFL needs more diverse ownership. Absolutely. And, there's a lot to do. And there's models that we set out to develop, Robert Bob and I, and during the Super Bowl that apply to this. There's models that I've developed between then and now that apply to this. And there's a lot of real world expertise that Robert Bob and the other members of Ray Bobbitt's team provide. And it's malleable. It doesn't just stop. It doesn't stop there. And I think at the end of the day, it is going to be a really worthwhile effort for a lot of people. I can tell you that there's more excitement for this among people that you wouldn't think would be excited than has been revealed to this point. And for a host of reasons, that has to do with how this country has changed and current events, of course, as well as just the need to get on with it, to have a society where, regardless of color or sex, there is enough wealth to produce the kind of lives that we want to live so that we don't feel that anyone's left out. And that's a valuable place to be. It's the perfect realization, I think, of the America that everybody wants. Now, I happen to think the NFL wants that. And I think that what we have to do is put ourselves in a position to be that. Now, there are some of you who will say, well, you're also media. What are you? I'm both. I own a media company. I'm not the first person in history to own a media company, or, specifically 76% of it, and be involved in forming a sports expansion team, let alone relocating an NFL team. I'm far from the first. It's just that all the other folks have been white. So I think there's a tendency for some people out there in the media to judge me as if I'm a reporter and I'm an entirely different animal. My background is not in journalism, it's in urban planning. One of my best friends is Kofi Bonner, who just went to be the CEO for Bedrock. And I have very much a hybrid background, and so therefore I've had a hybrid life, right? That's just the way that is. So, but me aside, Ray and all the other members of the team that he's put together, these are, as they say on the street, no joke, okay? And I really think that we've got a great foundation. What we have to do next is put together on paper a strategy of numerically where we're going, so we can see what we've got in the gaps that have to be filled and how they're going to be filled. There are, I built, when I had sports business simulations, I built something called the Oakland Baseball Sim World. And it asks you to do two things, basically run the baseball team, but then develop a stadium for the baseball team. And when you develop a stadium for the baseball team, you quickly understand how stadium financing impacts the financing of the sports business itself, right? That's what I built there. This is the real world of that, okay? This is also what the Raiders are facing in Las Vegas, and they're suffering from in the middle of a pandemic, is what happens to this dual structure when the market around them collapses and there's no appropriate government support to come immediately. All right. So we got a lot of work to do. Says, do you think the NFL wants this, that they'll ask for a second expansion team to be created if there's going to be an expansion team in Oakland? So you're asking me to think for the NFL. Do I think the NFL asks for a second expansion team to be created? Look, the way the NFL works is this. The NFL, I learned this a long time ago from Jim Steig. And Jim Steig was the senior vice president for the National Football League in charge of special events, the man we call Mr. Super Bowl. They've been, there was Jim, I forgot Jim's last name. Before Jim Steig, he was the first Mr. Super Bowl. There was Jim Steig, there was Frank Sapovitz, and now there's Peter O'Reilly. So there have been 4 in NFL history, 4 Mr. Super Bowls. We haven't had misses yet, but that'll come. And so what I learned from Jim is the NFL is an organization that prizes aggression. And the reason why Jacksonville landed the Super Bowl was because they aggressively pitched their ability to host the game again and again and again. The time they won against us, it wasn't the first time they tried. They tried again and they fell by the wayside way early in the process before. But they learned from that and they tried again, okay? So what I'm saying is that what we have to do is have our ducks in a row. And then once our ducks in a row first, aggressively pursue whatever opportunity comes up. If there's an opportunity to convince the NFL that an expansion team should be in Oakland, then we do that. What does that entail? Would that entail, I'm not saying this is what we're going to do. I'm saying, would that entail a ticket survey? What would that entail? Okay. But there's an opening. The openings we have to create for ourselves. And if that opening isn't large enough, what happens in this process is some other opportunity comes because of that. But the operative word is you must do. You must put together a plan, execute the plan, work the plan. That's what you have to do. So there you go. So I think the owners want that media market back, especially now in this climate. A lot of folks on both sides are protesting the NFL. Yeah, Raider Gans, that protest, I think some of that protest is engineered. And I want you to look up astroturfing, okay? And I think it's engineered for political gain. So some of that protest I don't take seriously. I take seriously that we're not engineering a counter protest like for television that changes the climate. All of these are political games. You have to remember, you're in a society now where people can engineer a political movement on a computer, hire a group of people to look like there's a protest occurring, have a camera focus very tight. Next thing you know, we got something on the news, which does not vet these things now, okay? Does not vet. The next thing you know, you got what happened last night. You have a group of fans booing, appropriately positioned so that it gets on television. Next thing you know, you think, oh, this is some disaster. As opposed to what I thought happened, I believe somebody went in, purchased those tickets, gave them to, these protesters and put them in there. Prove me wrong. Because I found an article in the Kansas City Star, I wrote about this on Oakland News Now, where you can go oaklandnewsnow.com, where they said, hey, by the way, folks, tickets are still available if you want to go. So who's to stop somebody from doing that? In other words, that stadium was not all filled with Kansas City season ticket holders. Buy at all. Okay? That's the dirty little secret. All right. So thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for this. Anybody else will have any other questions before I close out here? I think somebody just joined us. This went from 13 to 14. I think once again, I think Ray Bobbitt is to be really commended on the job that he has done. He's taken us from 0 to 60 in record time. I mean, if Ray Bobbitt were a car, he would be a Lamborghini supercar. So yeah, absolutely. So if nobody else has any other questions they want to post and ask, I'll be back later. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. Thank you.